All right, looks like we're live on YouTube.
Awesome. All right, I just sent the email out to the other guy that's supposed to join us.
I don't think I can share my screen.
I just promoted you to panelist. Let's see if that works.
Okay.
Okay, try now.
Yeah, I see the share button. Before it wasn't there.
Yeah, John Perkins should be joining us as well.
Should we give everybody, let's say, another 3 minutes, and we'll start at the 20-minute mark?
Yeah,
9:20.
Nobody likes videos, do they? You folks in your non-videos.
Yeah, actually, I can't share my screen.
No?
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, let me see if I can check the settings. 1 sec.
It says you're a panelist, Barry.
Can you share yours, Corey?
I just updated a setting now. Try again.
Okay, yep.
All right. Well, we can let John join us later. Let's keep an eye on the attendees and such. Promote him if you see him come in. John Perkins from Super was supposed to join us and help discuss, kind of join in some discussion with some Q&A on how this stuff works. But if you want to start us off with walking us through the article, Barry, kind of what it's about, why we did it, how it works, and we'll just go from there.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so welcome everybody to the second edition of the Status Token Economics series. Today we're going to be talking about the research we did on the sticker market. And I guess we'll spend maybe a little less time initially going into sort of the in-depth mechanics of things like a discount rate and things like that. But if anyone has questions about those, we'll be happy to answer them in the Q&A. You can also review the last video we did, the first part of the series on ENS usernames, where we dove deeper into those initially. So we'll just go ahead and get started and get into it. So the sticker market is a marketplace where artists can create sticker packs, post them for sale. The artist sets the price, and users can then purchase sticker packs, for use within Status, particularly in chat. Now, that's the high level overview of how it works from the user's perspective and from the artist's perspective. As far as how this, the economics of how this works, there's a little more behind that. So that's what we'd like to talk about today. Specifically, if we want to create a model around this, we have to start having some assumptions. And we can start with the first basic assumption, which we see in a lot of basically all our models, which is how many current Status users do we have? And at any given point in time, how many Status users will we have? And that's sort of what's one of the key things you need to have in order to figure out how many stickers you're gonna have at any point in time, right? Ultimately, in order to start figuring out the number of packs that are going to be bought at any point in time, we need to start coming up with ways to estimate these things. So, one place to start is with how many users we'll have at any time, but then we have to come up with some kind of reasonable estimate for what % of users are going to buy them. We didn't spend too much time thinking about this. We started with a low conservative number, 10%. But if you go through our notebooks, you can see that this is just a if, but the actual values can be adjusted, and you can see how that impacts the actual value. So if someone does have better insight into what % of users can be expected to actually buy, or what the growth rate for our users will be, or any of these assumptions, you can go into our notebooks, play around with them, and we'd love to hear from you if you have some insight into a better way to estimate these things. So going back to users, this is something you'll see constantly across all our notebooks, which is the number of users we have over time, right? So in order to do that, you need to estimate the number of users we have today, the user growth rate, averaged, let's say, over the next 10 years, and also user churn, right? And you can play with those variables and come up with users over time, right? And you'll see through the power of compounding, it could turn into a substantial number of users in the later years, which is sort of why I guess it's important, especially for startups, to focus on the growth rate, user growth rate. The discount rate is a way of factoring in risks associated with future years, right? So we're making estimations about the future. These things are inherently uncertain. We need some way to factor in that uncertainty. And that's what the discount rate captures. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into that right now, but if anyone in the Q&A has questions about it, or you want to talk about it, I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. So let's now jump into the variables that are specific to the sticker market. And most use cases have sort of the general variables that are applicable across the network, such as number of Status users. And then there's specific variables. But in the case of sticker market, it's going to be the actual percentage of users that buy sticker packs. So if we say, okay, from our 2,000 users that we have today, 10% are going to buy them. That creates 200 users. Now since we're doing this on an annualized basis, we should ask ourselves, how often is the user going to buy stickers? Well, how many times per year? Our default value here is 1, but it may not be unreasonable to set that to 2, 3, because some users may buy 20 a year, some may buy 1, and that'll skew the average to something like 2, 3, 4. So we're definitely open to other interpretations people have, especially if someone has studied other markets where stickers are sold, like Line, and they have good metrics from there. We'd love to hear that. But also, once this is live, we'll be able to look at how users are actually interacting with sticker market and adjust these assumptions. And that's part of also what having these notebooks is about. It's not just about having trying to make a crystal ball into the future. It's about creating an initial model and then maintaining it as we get more data, as these things are actually out in the world. Okay, and the final variable after you have the number of users that will be buying sticker packs, how often they'll be buying sticker packs, how much are they going to pay for a sticker pack on average, right? So we use what we think is a reasonable assumption of $1 per sticker pack. Again, this is meant to be an average number, so it could be more, it could be less, and my hunch is there could be already good data out there from existing markets that if somebody has managed to gather, we'd love to see that and maybe make a better assumption here. But once you have that, if you say, for example, that you have 200 users per year buying 1 sticker pack a year at $1 per pack, well, that's essentially right, $200 in that year, right? And in the early years, like this first year, you don't even really see it on this graph because it pales in comparison to the later years where you have a tremendous amount of users. Even if you have 1 million users buying 1 sticker pack a year at $1, that's $1 million in value flow through the contract, which is significantly more than 200. 200 is like not even visible in comparison, right? So I guess that's just a way of thinking of how things scale over time. Okay. Now, there's one other, I think one thing that makes sticker market different from the last use case we discussed, which was ENS usernames, is ENS usernames is what we call a bonding model, where when someone registers a username, they are just interacting with a contract, and their tokens get locked up in that contract and bonded to that contract. So they effectively get taken out of supply at that point in time. Sticker market is actually a marketplace. The users are not, it's not just a user interacting with the contract. It's also a two-sided marketplace. So there's multiple types of users, right? There's artists and there's consumers. And as a result, there's 2 types of value flows that we have to value here. So the first type is, or it's a new type that we're introducing here that wasn't something that was being valued in ENS usernames because it wasn't a factor, which is the value that happens when users interact with each other. And that's essentially when someone buys a sticker pack, from an artist, that the cost of the sticker pack doesn't go to status, and it doesn't get bonded to a contract. It effectively ends up in possession of the artist. So we use a different mechanism to value these flows over time, and that's sort of using the equation of exchange, which is more often used in valuing currencies and economies rather than sort of discounted cash flows, which is often used in valuing kind of equities. So the way, so that's one cash flow, and one type of value flow, and we'll come back to how the mechanics of that work in a minute. And the other one is that the contract does support a burn fee for every transaction, which means that a certain percentage does get effectively taken out of goes to the burn address and effectively gets taken out of circulation, and that's a way of actually bonding, sort of like the bonding model, like we discussed in ENS, where that value will accrue to the network in the same way it does with ENS. The one exception, the one difference is in ENS, a user can release their username, and in that case, the value effectively goes. It's almost like in that point, it's a negative value flow for the network. But since this is burned and not just bonded, unless there's a minting event in the future, then this value is sort of permanently accrued to the network, and that's what the burn fee covers. And so the total value of this network is going to be all the discounted exchange values plus all the discounted burn values, summed up, and that's sort of the total value. The equation of exchange, I think we're going to dive into more here, because it's a new concept, and it's not one that's necessarily as easy to understand. So we may spend a little more time here, but we can break this down essentially by we already know what two of these variables are. So just to sum this up, the equation of exchange is MV equals PQ, right? And you see it below, and Chris Berneski, he did a great write-up on sort of the details of it, and I recommend anyone who wants to know more about it, go read that article. There's not enough time to really cover the details here, but we'll try to give a very quick primer and then sort of move forward from there. But effectively, what we are trying to solve for here is the size of the asset base, right? So it's what variables do we already know here, right? So based on our assumptions here, we already know that we estimated the price of our resource, right? The price of a sticker pack. Now, we also estimated how many times it's going to be purchased in a year. That's the quantity, right? Users times number of purchases per year. That's the quantity. Price is the price. The next one is velocity, and we'll just, if you divide PQ by the velocity, you'll get the size of that asset base in a given year. Velocity is sort of the trickiest one to understand and to analyze and to come up with a good estimate for. But it is essentially the amount of times that S&T turns over in a given year. And because S&T has different types of use cases, it could be harder to estimate, but there's been pretty good estimates done on Bitcoin, which is estimated to have a velocity of about 6.5 times per year, meaning one Bitcoin would on average change hands 6.5 times in a year. Ether, it's about 8 times in a year. So one ETH changes hands about 8 times in a year. So we used a velocity of 12 for S&T because we do have these different types of use cases. And like sticker market perhaps could be one of those use cases where people are frequently in and out of S&T. And we just estimate that an artist, perhaps for all the fees they receive, they might reasonably withdraw their S&T once per month, right? So if they do it once per month, that's 12 times in a year. That gives us a token velocity of 12. And that's really all the variables you need to figure out what the size of your sort of monetary base from this use case is going to be in a given year. And that brings us to sort of this chart where you can take these variables and plug them in, and it'll plot it out over the next 10 years, right? Actually, in this chart shows not just the value that comes from the green bars are the equation of exchange values, and the blue bars is the value from burning. All right, and if you combine them or stack them, that's going to be the total value in any given year, and the total value discounted is going to be all those values discounted to the present, right? Yeah, the one last thing we need is, since we've only projected this out to year 10, which is, we just are assuming that that's when there's going to be aggressive growth, and then after year 10, we don't think it's just going to die, but we think that it's going to have more moderate growth. And so that's where you basically have to come up with some estimate for the future. And it's generally reasonable to use something that's just close to inflation or less, because I mean, really, if you use something significantly more than long-term inflation, eventually, your model would become like the size of something crazy, like the size of the global GDP, which is, not realistic. So using a low terminal rate is realistic. And so once we have that, we just add in our terminal value plus our discounted equation of exchange values plus our discounted burn fees, and we have our net present value. And we also have a nice scenario analysis at the bottom where you can play with these variables. And the scenario analysis specifically targets the burn rate. So here you can actually adjust the burn rate and see how it impacts the net present value. So currently, when the sticker market launches, the burn rate will be set to 0. There'll be no burn fee. But this is something that I guess we can open up to the community and get more feedback on where should the burn rate be over time. But you could see how it will impact the net present value. With a burn rate of 0, the net present value is around 4 million. But if we make the burn rate 1%, we've added another 630,000 in value. If we go to a 10% burn rate, then burn fee, then the net present value is 10 million, right? 25% is. So you could see sort of the impact that the burn rate can have, assuming nothing else changes. So that's just something for consideration. I think this is maybe a good place for me to stop and either throw it to Corey if he has anything to add, or open it up for questions.
Yeah, I've got a few things to add. One, I guess it's interesting to look at something like burn rate, and I chose that for a specific reason on the scenario analysis. Is I guess other things like this, like Line, who has a sticker market, which make a tremendous amount of profit from it, or at least a good portion of their net profits come from their sticker market. Their profit margin is essentially our burn rate. But if you look at the way Status is built, the value flows to the network as a whole and not so much our organization. Now we're playing with interesting things to do with fees across the network that people can participate in, but that's for a later discussion. But I always find it kind of interesting how like our burn rate, something we're just saying this is going away and getting locked away, which makes the entire community rise as a whole, versus a strict profit margin is interesting in that. But even if you raise the burn rate, or I don't want to say throw this money away, but burn it and make it not available so that all other S&T currently in circulation is more valuable, isn't necessarily a good thing. As you see the burn rate go up, the net present value goes up. But what you're missing from this particular scenario analysis is the money that's not flowing to the artists anymore. And so if at a 0% burn rate, the artist gets 100% profit. And that's going to have other effects on the network, especially other people coming to the sticker market to sell stickers if they make a good amount of money from it, especially because they're making all of it instead of like something like Line. I think their profit margin is 30%. Is that right, Barry?
So I think that the burn fee would be used only if it's needed. For example, we need to implement a burn fee to prevent the bad use of the contract, because, for example, maybe if there is no fee, then no burn fee, then maybe people can just make sticker packs to themselves, and this could be profitable to them, or they don't lose anything. So that would be the reason for having a burn fee. But that's why we don't know yet if we're going to use a burn fee. But yeah, that would be discussed.
Thanks,
Yeah. So two things. So actually, this talk made me realize one place that we should look, and maybe I'll do that this week and update the model or post and discuss what I find, is analyze Line to see, just based on their financial statements, how their sticker market operates, what are the numbers behind it, and the financial metrics behind that. Yeah, and I think also another good way to think about the burn rate is it's a way of distributing fees back, back to the network, or to holders of S&T. Really, if you decide to burn S&T or take the actual fees received, and if you had a mechanism to do it, actually distribute it as a distribution to every single holder of S&T, it's effectively the same thing. Either way, you're effectively returning capital or fees back to holders of S&T. But obviously, the mechanics of doing a burn is easier than maybe distributing fees to every single S&T holder. And there's also tax implications if every holder of S&T receives a distribution versus, just burning.
Yeah, I also wanted to take a moment to introduce Jonathan Perkins, who decided to join us. John made I guess he's a little more knowledgeable on stickers or digital art, for that matter, as a progenitor of Super Rare. So why don't you give us a quick introduction as to kind of like where you come from?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to join the call. So I'm a co-founder of Super Rare, which is a NFT art social marketplace. And so I think this stuff is super interesting. Our team has obviously thought a lot about marketplaces for digital art and stickers and that sort of thing. So it's cool to see this evolving. I guess I do have a few questions. So, questions and comments. So earlier in the discussion, earlier in the blog post, there's questions about like what percentage of users, or like how many users are there, what percentage of them might be likely to actively buy sticker packs and that sort of thing. Just out of curiosity, like somebody said it's like around 2,000 number. Is that like a accurate number of like how many people are like daily users of Status?
It's actually a hard number to grasp when you don't take any metrics of your network.
Right. Okay.
We have various ways of like looking at metrics we can see, like kind of like if you would look at a mail server, you can see unique number of envelopes, number of envelopes that pass through, or unique IDs of nodes, or various things that are completely anonymized.
Yeah.
It's really hard to see. And you also look at like number of downloads for the actual app, or how many people click on the link on the web page. But none of that actually links to a hard set of number of active users or individual users actively using the app. So we kind of have to make a guess back and forth, and we think 2,000 is a reasonable estimate. And then from there, we then have to make another guess on like what's the percentage of people to do this, because we don't have very good like data anywhere. And I guess that's a good place to stop and reiterate that this is just a model, and we're coming up with ways in which the model works. And all these things are just all of the variables that are associated with how you get to the final value. And this right now, because we don't have real world data, this is most useful in comparing with other use cases across Status if we hold all of the same variables the same.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So yeah, I guess just a couple more ideas around that. I mean, I would definitely recommend, like you said, trying to get any data you can within products like Line. Telegram is also one where people use sticker packs, and maybe Quid as well. And we actually have had a few conversations with some folks who worked at Quid, and there's a phenomenon that we've seen really strongly at Super Rare, and folks at Quid have also mentioned. It's this kind of like whale phenomenon, where a few a small number of really like heavy power users make up for like a huge or like a large percentage, like an outsized percentage of overall like sales of stickers or content. So I would expect that to be true as the status sticker market kind of shapes up. So that's it. Kind of like isn't great for modeling, but I think that's a phenomenon that that it might run into.
So do you think in like it's possible a more realistic model might be maybe not 10% of users buy stickers, it could be something like 1 or 2%, but at an average spend of like 10, 20, 30 times per year?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to extrapolate just from scratch, but that's just, you know, one thing that we really learned that, you know, it was like totally unexpected. We were like, oh, there's like, you know, everyone's kind of a normal user, but then we have this like a handful of people who are just kind of like going crazy and, you know, spending tons of money. And yeah, like I mentioned, we've chatted with Quid, and, you know, they told stories about like some like retired military guy that lives in Hawaii and has spent like $50,000 on Quid stickers, stuff like that. So pretty interesting. Another comment that I just wrote down during the as you're going through the model, just something that's interesting to consider, maybe talk with the artist community about more, is like earning a, you know, volatile asset versus earning something like DAI. You know, if you price something in a marketplace, like our marketplace is an ETH, you know, it can be kind of crazy especially for people that are new to crypto. So you know, set something at $100, and then 6 months later it's like at $400 or it's at like $50. So it's an ongoing conversation for us. You know, some people do like earning volatile crypto. Some people are more interested in you know, earning something like DAI, but I think just throwing that out there as something to maybe you know, survey artists or just like have be part of the conversation.
That's definitely interesting. Or even like if anything's purchased within S&T, like you need S&T to do this stuff, having an automated way of putting it into DAI so that artists who aren't necessarily familiar with handling exchanges or doing things just can kind of automatically put themselves into a more stable asset, because of the way S&T works and will work and has the potential to evolve in different ways, means that its price will probably always be volatile. There's no reason for it to be stable.
Yeah. So I mean, I think having a feature like that where you could like withdraw or, you know, present it, you know, yeah, stabilize, present it in a way that's like makes sense to people. But yeah, that's definitely like an ongoing conversation for us.
Anything you think we did wrong here in terms of like setting it up to try and model this? No, I don't think. I mean, I think this is interesting. I you know, I particularly think that like the buy and burn model, or whatever, like the burning model that you guys set out is interesting. Kind of, you know, kind of how like the MKR token works in the MakerDAO model. Rather than like distributing fees to network participants, it's essentially, you know, removing the overall supply. So I think that's like super interesting to research. Do we have any questions from? Oh, we do. Questions from the community. Thanks, John. That's probably a good time to go through these. We have a bit of time left. We can probably go over because we started late as well, if people are okay with that. First question from the community. The dollar cost per pack cannot be a constant variable because the S&T price fluctuates. Is it possible to apply the fluctuation of the S&T price into the model?
No. So the short answer is no. And the reason is because you need some kind of constant value when you do evaluation over time. And that translates into the discount rate and the value flows. And ultimately, though, yes, S&T does fluctuate over time, but you have to imagine that the prices of stickers will be adjusted at, if a sticker pack costs the equivalent of $1, and then a few months later it costs the equivalent of $10 just because of some kind of fluctuation in the price and nothing else. You would imagine that the artist might adjust the price, especially if it starts to impact their sales. So we think that even though S&T itself can fluctuate on a short-term basis, on a longer-term basis, people are going to, number one, adjust their prices. But number two, and I think this does go back to the point that John made earlier about pricing it in some kind of stable token, which is that we could do that, and fundamentally the economics of the model wouldn't change much. For example, I mean, the big part that would change is if the artists themselves were paid directly in say DAI or something like that, right? That part then would not impact S&T, but they could do that, and then we could keep DAI in some kind of vault, which then can be used to burn S&T or distribute to S&T holders, or do some kind of value distribution to the network. So at least the burn part of the protocol wouldn't be affected by using some kind of basically any other token. Yeah, as far as pricing in using the volatility of S&T to do a long-term valuation, it's just not feasible right now, because the crypto markets, they themselves don't have any kind of long-term yet credit markets which you can use to discount future value flows. And in order to do that, meaning using the price of S&T, you would have to then start making speculations on what the price of S&T would be at future points of time based on its own value flow, and it becomes this sort of circular logic which just sort of makes the whole valuation untenable.
Sticker derivatives.
One day, maybe.
Yeah, and as well, for the first version, this is correct. The artist can adjust the value as the fluctuations happen. But for future, we are planning to research on making this conversion automatically from DAI to S&T to then processing the contract. So yeah, it's currently in USD dollars, but the contract is S&T, but we are researching on that as well.
All right, let's go with move on to question 2 here. Does all the S&T amount from a sticker buyer go to the multi-sig wallet controlling the contract, and some of the S&T could be burned as a fee?
So yes, no. Everything goes to the artists. Just a little bit would be burned if we find it's a security adjustment we need. As well, we have another adjustment where we can put a donation. Also, there is something missing in this whole token economic here. That is for now, the registration price is 0 for the artists, but we can have also some registration price that would go to the multi-sig wallet. Then yes, this registration price would go to the multi-sig wallet. But most of the flow would be buying sticker packs. That would be the money that goes directly to the artist. So yeah, that would be the answer.
I'll have to update the model for that then. Thanks for that, Ricardo. Question 3 from the community. As a result, does the net present value at the end mean the total amount S&T burned? I can feel this one. No, that's not what it actually means. What that means is, so the net present value is a way of trying to estimate the total value of a given project based on future profits, right? And so part of that is going to be an evaluation of what could potentially be burned over the years. And this has a lot to do with that idea of what discount rate is that Barry brought up. And a discount rate is, we'll just start off with the concept of discounting money, future money. And that is, if you're going to get money in the future, because it's the future, you aren't necessarily sure how much of that money you're actually going to get. Just have an idea of what it could be. And because of that, based around the uncertainty, what you end up doing when you evaluate these things is you discount it, because the old saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. What you have now is always worth more than what you could have later. And you discount, the further you go into the future, the further you discount something. And that's what the discount rate is. And so what we do here is we try and estimate how much money could potentially flow into the contract over the course of the future. We project out to 10 years. And that's what you see in this plot here. And then what we do is we then discount all of those values associated with how far in the future it is, which brings those values down. So if you go up a little bit, Barry, to the plot that's not broken up.
So maybe this relates more to the utility, like the how useful S&T becomes.
Yeah.
So the value increases the utility of the token, right?
Yeah. So what this does is it gives us, so go back up a little bit, Barry, sorry. Right there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is the amount of money that we estimate based on all the variables up to here that could flow into the contract over the next 10 years. If you go down below. This is us evaluating what that money is worth and then discounting it over the next 10 years. So what these numbers are, if you add them up, are significantly less than the ones above. And then what we do is we add these together plus a terminal value, which is a way of looking at, okay, we have the next 10 years. What's the rest of time going to be? And we add all of that up to give us a single number. And what that number is the potential utility of a given use case. And we can take that number and compare it to other use cases to see, like, is this use case have larger impact to the ecosystem than this one, or so on and so forth. And these are just financial models that most people use in order to evaluate whether or not something is worth doing, or how much money it could potentially bring in versus like how much it costs to develop, to then figure out whether or not they're going to invest in it. What we've done is we've tried to use these models to see, like, how useful is this use case? What's its potential impact over the years? And then compare that to, say, ENS usernames. And then we'll kind of have an idea on, like, how useful are all these things in the S&T.
Yeah, for example, S&T is a single use. Each user can only use once, and it's a really low value. And also it doesn't goes to other person wallet. So it stops there. It's locked. It's almost burned, because it could be considered burned in ENS usernames, because you usually won't release your username. So yeah, in sticker market, you are transferring to other person, so you're generating more utility. Other person would then use it to do other things as well.
Yep.
And also the users, it's multiple times they can buy as well. Like, there is not much use case of buying two usernames. Maybe you want, but there is more use case in buying to sticker packs for might have more and more use case.
And the last question is, do we have any strategies to bring in great sticker artists? Unfortunately, our marketing lead, Johnny, is not here. He's on vacation, so he would have the best answer for that, or if there's any plans so far to do it. But what we've done is we've commissioned, for initial launch, we've commissioned a few artists to create nice sticker packs. And these come from really great portfolio artists they're quite famous for some of their work. I can't name what they've done off the top of my head because I don't remember. But we'll definitely have that out for people to know later on down the line. But we have commissioned them. They'll make the first sticker packs, and whatever gets bought goes straight to them. So all proceeds will go to them, and hopefully, we'll have some data around how much money they've made from the initial launch and the sticker packs they created, which we can then start to talk to people about commissioning more. Eventually, we'll open up the market to be free for anyone to publish stickers and make money from it.
And also, there is other thing to consider in these marketing strategies is that these products, they are more now for the crypto community. We are not like launching it worldwide, like in the marketing. Of course, anyone can use it. Anyone is free, but in the marketing perspective, we still for us to go worldwide, like everyone marketing to everyone, just like other messenger applications do. We would need to have all our onboarding and all our user experience worked out to remove things like the constraints of blockchains.
Broke up with it there, Ricardo, but yeah, basically
Exactly.
to make it easier for everyone to use if we'd like to be open for the general market.
Now it's kind of complicated for the users to buy SNT. For me, I don't think it's complicated, but some people think it's complicated. And this is not just for status; it's for Ether itself. Is as well. And also Bitcoin is the same thing. But we are researching on identity that should bring this user experience better for the users. They can recover the funds. They can then place have usernames is part of that identity research, and there is more to come. So then we can have this marketing to worldwide. That we are planning.
For those that don't know, Ricardo is the smart contract creator. He's the one that wrote the whole thing, or at least the majority of the Solidity code for the smart contract. So of course he doesn't feel it's that difficult to use. He's very good at writing smart contracts. But yeah, we're definitely doing a lot of research into trying to make it as easy as possible for people to interact with these things, which then allows us to open up to a wider community.
But something that is very differential that status sticker market have from others is that everything goes to the artists. In other sticker pack markets, usually half of the value goes to the operator. Like I don't know what are the companies doing that, but I seen the values. I think it's. Do someone remember the name? But anyway, or in our case, the artist could also ask. So this could be viral because then the artists would like the users to use this platform instead of the others, because in this platform they get more money. Is out direct to them. So this is also a natural marketing we have. We are better, like in this aspect. Yep. We just have to fix the user experience.
I agree with that. To wrap up, there's no more questions here. Does anyone from on the call have any particular questions since you're here? I will take that as a no. Nothing on YouTube. All right, cool. So Barry, can you scroll down to the call to action part of the blog? If you do have questions and we didn't get to them, or you'd like to add more to it or contribute in any way, shape, or form, you can find this article on our.status.im. And at the bottom, we have a call to action that has more detailed information on where this write-up came from. Mostly Barry's more detailed notebooks. He has a lot more where this came from, and we'll continue to create blogs that make them a little more accessible to the general public. You can join the conversation in Status at #token-economics. That's where we all hang out to discuss these things and learn more about the various SNC use cases at that link right there. And I think there's also a link right at the main page of status.im that discuss these use cases. So with that, thanks for joining us. Thanks everybody for their work on explaining this stuff and your questions. And we'll see you in a few weeks with the dApp store.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.